Hello everyone and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. Today we're going to continue on with the Wings adventure, and it's all about the tour the band took after the success of the album Venus and Mars. Paul felt the band was strong enough to take the show on the road. In the book Band on the Run, the author thought the song Rock Show held a clue with the lyrical references to the Wings' past and future concerts, such as the Hollywood Bowl, the Concert Gebouw, and Madison Square Garden. So this was a big show, and Paul really got into planning for it. He wanted state-of-the-art equipment, lights and lasers, 12.5 tons of equipment, semi-trucks, and a specially chartered jet with Wings Over America on the sides. And Tony Dorsey was asked to lead and organize the brass section, and a whopping 37 guitars were needed for the tour. Linda had a bunch of equipment too. It included a Fender Rhodes electric piano, a Mellotron, a Model C3 Hammond organ, an ARP brand synthesizer, a Hofner clavinet, and a Mini Moog synthesizer. So Linda must have really learned the keyboards since her playing in the beginnings, because she sure had enough keyboards to play for this tour. So Paul made sure that they rehearsed before the tour began. Paul was always a perfectionist and wanted to make sure the band was in great form before they started playing the dates. They practiced in a vacant movie theater in Rye and on the large sound stage at the EMI Studios in London. It was a film studio. But the bands weren't the only one rehearsing. The lighting crew got in the act too. So then they had the test run. On the 6th of September 1975, Paul McCartney and Wings held a dress rehearsal of the concert before 1,200 EMI employees. So that must have been a great show to be able to be a part of. And then some members of the UK Wings fan club were also invited, so they provided feedback, and 3 days later the band took their show on the road. The first leg of the tour, well, the band went to 12 British cities in a 2-week spread. The first show was in Southampton, Vermont on September the 9th, 1975. According to the book Band on the Run, the crowds and reviewers loved it, but of course there had to be some negativity. They had a reviewer that was from Melody Maker, a magazine that really didn't care for Wings, and the reviewer said that the concert was lackluster. But it's funny, though, that another staff member from the same magazine said it was excellent from all points of view, and the person also praised Linda on the keyboards, so that was good. And then they began the world tour. Next stop was Australia. On October 28th, 1975, the band started off rocky because they held everybody up that were passengers on the plane by being late to get to the plane. Paul McCartney had requested that they have the plane on hold, so they probably weren't looked on favorably once they got on board. But the Australian tour was a great success. Scalpers were selling tickets to the show for several times their value. Paul and the band enjoyed the tour, and Paul said it wasn't like work, it was more like a holiday. So Paul was the one that the media wanted to talk to, and they kept asking him questions about the Beatles. Paul would answer, but he reminded them that he was a member of Wings, not Paul McCartney, ex-Beatle. I have to admit that in those days, I too kept remembering the Beatles, and it was hard to think of Paul and a new band. So you wouldn't think that Linda was a nervous person, but regarding the tour, she was nervous. She didn't like how the press and the fans could be mean to her. But she started to gain supporters, though. Paul said he needed Linda for his confidence. He asked her to join the band, and she agreed because she was a wonderful person, he said. And by 1976, she was there by God doing it all, Paul stated. So the tour was successful and sold out, and the critics gave rave reviews. Paul included songs from Wings' previous 2 albums, and he put in some Wings hits, and he finally put in some Beatles songs, 5 of them. Critics said Yesterday was the high point of the concert. Well, the funny thing is that some members of the audience didn't want Beatles songs in the show because they only knew the new stuff. They would say, how come you're playing the old stuff? So Paul found that strange, and he loved it, though, because it meant that he didn't have to live in the past, and you could keep moving if you want. There was an embarrassing incident while the group was in Australia. The families and the roadies had decided to visit some sites, and they planned to visit a zoo. And McCartney's longtime housekeeper, Rose Martin, who helped take care of the Paul and Linda's kids while on tour, arrived just as the group had gathered to get on a bus to see the zoo. Rose had gotten her hair done and had her camera when suddenly Linda said that Rose wasn't invited. Linda, she had a list of things for the housekeeper to do. Rose then got off the bus embarrassed, no doubt, by this turn of events. Everyone on the bus, for the most part, were embarrassed too, everyone except Linda. So Linda wasn't like Paul's former fiancée, Jane Asher, who was gracious and ladylike, according to Rose, and Rose told Denny's girlfriend things about Linda that she couldn't repeat. So I wonder what that was. But next, the group's next leg was supposed to be in Japan. Tickets had been sold to fans, but when they were in Melbourne, the band got a call and saying Paul's visa was canceled because of his earlier drug convictions. You would think they would have known that before all the things had been set. So everybody in the band was disappointed, especially Denny. He had wanted to go to Japan for years. The Minister of Justice made the decision, according to Paul. The minister didn't like that Paul McCartney and Wings were arrested in 1972 in Sweden over a marijuana possession, and then also in 1973 a marijuana fine from Scottish officials. So Paul seemed to have problems with Japan because later on in 1980, when they were allowed to play there, he was detained after attempting to bring a half a pound of weed into the country at Tokyo's Narita airport. At the Tokyo Narcotic Detention Center, Maga became known as inmate number 22. He faced 9 days of interrogation and a maximum penalty of 7 years hard labor. Well, I guess Paul should have known better going to the airport with that. But in 2004, Paul talked about the incident, saying, "We were about to fly to Japan, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get anything to smoke over there, and this stuff was too good to flush down the toilet, so I thought I'd take it with me." Despite the amicable resolution, upon returning home, he made the decision to disband Wings, and they never ended up playing Japan after all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So Paul and the band, they offered a film of the group performing the concert, and it was to be shown on Japanese TV. Well, the Japanese broadcasters were afraid to show it because they thought it might endorse drug use. So at the end of the show, they had a debate over the evils of marijuana. It bothered Paul, but he said, "If the Minister of Justice says we can't come in, then we can't come in. So I'll see you next time. Don't worry, we'll see you when we can come back to your beautiful country. Sayonara." So at the end of this video, Paul must have felt great knowing how successful his Wings tour was doing. Starting in England and going to Australia, he was met by enthusiastic fans and raving reviews for the most part. And it had to ease his mind to know that in some cases the fans preferred his Wings band music to his days in the Beatles. Just years before, he wondered if his music career was over and if he could ever achieve the success he had as a Beatle. So he was able to do that, and it was just the beginning of a new chapter in his music career. And the next video, I'll keep going on with Wings. I hope everybody doesn't mind, but we're about to come to the conclusion pretty soon. But I find it very interesting that the book brings up things I never realized that happened. So I figured that you, the viewer, would probably like to see stuff like that too. So I hope everybody's been having a good day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would help the channel. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, if you could do it, that would help too. I appreciate all the Beatles fans who have subscribed so far. Also, if you would click on the notification bell, if you haven't already, you'll be notified whenever a new video appears. So tune in again soon for another episode of the Beatles Forever. Thank you. Bye.